Yeah, so I liked your idea of progress over perfection for today because, I mean, not only is it like applicable to anything we really do, but especially as creatives, I feel like we're always our own biggest critics. So just, working on a project and getting to the point where it's like, okay, um, done is better than perfect is one that I honed in on when I was finishing my book. I just feel like there were so many things that I could have done differently, and I spent a lot of time editing that I was finally like, "Listen, I've gotta just do it. It's gotta just be done."
I think that's really cool. And, I think a lot of times, like, we can be hard on ourselves for not being where we want to be exactly. But I think a lot of times we have that mentality because, like, yes, we're achieving our goals and we're making progress, but at the same time, we're always setting the bar a little higher. So instead of taking a second to appreciate how far we've come, we're just constantly being hard on ourselves. So I think it's really important to just really accept and appreciate where you are and how far you've come. How has your experience been with that with writing, and how have you been with yourself, like your self care and your mindfulness?
Yeah, so when you were just talking about that, I was wondering if any of that carries over from when I was still in, like, corporate life,
Mm.
just that sense of hustle and get it done. But since I've been, just focusing in on my creative works, I'm kind of like free of that expectation externally, but internally, it's still like I almost micromanage myself.
Yeah, I think you have a really interesting perspective, especially because you were in the corporate world. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I lasted 3 weeks in the corporate world, so I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot of credibility to talk about that, but I know a little bit on how it goes, and they're always micromanaging or raising the bar to be higher. It's like you're not doing enough. So what are some things that have helped you release some of those thoughts? Release the I'm not good enough and just appreciate where you are.
I think what helps me most through that is prioritizing being centered in myself. So
Mm,
if the work that I'm doing is, nourishing me, then it can't really be the wrong work.
yeah, that's true. What are some things that you like to do for your self nourishment and to keep mindfulness in your day to day?
So my mornings are always super mindful. I try to set myself up for a good day when I first get up in the morning. So I go like right into the bathroom, do my self care. And one of my favorite things to do is I do 10 I love yous. So in the mirror, I say, I love you 10 times. And one thing I noticed with that is when I first started doing it, it was just like difficult to do. And even each day you see with each repetition, you get like a little more fun with it or a little more into your body. And I think that is just like such a great practice and easy, private.
Something interesting that you said is that it was hard at first. That's so interesting to me because I remember when I was in dance class years ago, when I was still in like middle school and high school, one of my dance teachers made us sit in the mirror at the last 10 minutes of class. They turned the lights off and they said, go sit in the mirror and tell yourself things that you love about yourself. And I couldn't think of anything. I was like, why are we doing this? Like, I would rather be doing freaking spins and jumps over there. Why are we doing mindfulness? And I think a lot of times, like, we're so hard on ourselves that we forget to tell ourselves, "I love you." I love how it's so simple, but I love how you do that. It's so beautiful. I've been trying to like incorporate lately is treat yourself the way you would treat somebody else. And if you wouldn't treat somebody else with how hard you are on yourself, why would you do it to yourself and add more stress to yourselves?
Absolutely, and I thought you were gonna go in the reverse direction with that. So my mind went to, like, you know, do unto others as you do to yourself, which is the same thing, but, like, my experience in, like, the mental health world is, like, I exhausted myself just pouring and pouring and pouring to the people that I was working with, that I ended up being completely depleted.
Yeah.
So I
I
think there's different routes, and the expectations, from life and from within ourselves can become really crippling from my experience if we allow them to get to that point.
completely. And I think that just comes with learning to give yourself grace, but also learning to give yourself boundaries with people, places, or things. I mean, boundaries can be so foreign to somebody who's never heard of them. Like, the first time I heard of them was 23 years old, and I did a Google search, and I was like, what is a boundary? And then quickly learned right after that. And it's like so important for us to give ourselves that grace.
Yeah, and especially boundaries, they're super hard too. Um, because there is an element that we can't control in regard to how others are going to respond. So, what do you think is like a small boundary that maybe one that you started out with or one that you implement, as often as you remember?
Boundary that I implement. I'm trying to like pick an area. Let me see. Whether I'm trying to think like a certain area. Okay, simplify it. Whether it's friends or family members. Okay, here's one with family members. Clear communication. I need clear communication. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I really try to implement with my family is that, listen, like, tell me what you need. Like, I would rather you just talk to me instead of yelling at me. That's the one thing I can't take is I can't, like, yelling is not for me, and it's a boundary. Like, if someone like raises their voice or gets a little heated, I just walk away and come back and I ask for clear communication because it's really important to me.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal boundary. It's like one of the best ones you can have, really, because you're setting expectations, like that there's love there. So, you know, there should be a level of respect that, is woven into every conversation. But people forget that, or they
Yeah,
don't realize that.
that, and it's like, I think it's just so easy to get comfortable with like your loved ones or your close friends. Like, I think at first, I remember I was really close friends with this one girl, and she was telling me, she's like, yeah, like this girl, she came to my house and she just went in my fridge and she just took some food, which would seem like kind of normal if you've been like friends for a while, but she was like, it's only the second time coming over. And that was a boundary for her, is like asking if you need something. She was very much okay by saying, yes, you can have it, but really communicating and asking. And I think a lot of times, even when we get into long term relationships or long friendships, we get comfortable and we forget about those little things.
Yeah, I think another thing that I've experienced a lot is like passive aggressive communication. So, kind of like hinting at what you want to say, but dancing around it. That's one thing that I absolutely cannot. I cannot stand. Like you
How
were saying, just tell me what it is that you need to tell me.
Yeah, how would you communicate that to somebody? Because I think passive aggressiveness is something that is more common than we think, where sometimes we can brush it off and be like, haha, it was just a joke, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, so typically you can kind of like feel the energy of a passive aggressive statement, right? So what I like to do is just call it out. I'm like,
Mm.
I call out the feeling. So it's like it feels like there's more to what you want to say there, and I open it up. If they want to double down and say, "Oh, it's nothing," then it's out of my court. If they want to engage in that conversation so we can solve what's at on the table, that's my preference, but I'm not responsible for that, you know?
I really like how you said that you added to it. You said if somebody is passive aggressive and the energy in the room is weird, you say, "Do you want to add to that or do you have anything else to say?" Because that also leaves room for more communication to instead of awkwardness. Like I think that's
Yeah.
it cuz
And
things
also, I think in those situations, we can have a tendency to assume what they mean, and we could make it out to be worse. So it's
yeah.
better, I think, to try to air it out as soon as we can.
Absolutely. I love that. Maddie said passive aggressiveness is the worst, and I have a friend who is secretly passive aggressive.
Oh, severely passive aggressive. Ah.
How would you what kind of tips would you give, Emily?
So I keep a pretty tight circle, but the way I keep like a caliber, like different friends can see like different levels of my friendship. Frankly, because I am truthful to the point of let's really get in there and get through this, and not everybody can handle that,
Mhm.
which is totally fine. But for the ones who, well, if they're severely passive aggressive, they're probably not going to want to hear. I would use I feel statements. I would say, when you said so and so, it made me feel blank. In the future, this is what I need.
I think that's a really great way to go about it, whether it's with a friend or any type of person that you have that relationship with, because then that way they don't get defensive. Because I think one of like the scary things about being open about your communication is them being defensive. But if you start with, I feel like this because of XYZ, then it makes them look at it from a different perspective. That was really great
Yeah,
advice.
or at least prompts that reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to like, I don't know, I'm trying to like put these words together. When it comes to goal settings, what does that like entail to you? What does that look like for you on your self-care journey and being mindful?
So I tend to see things as a big vision first, and then I have to work backwards. So that can be really frustrating, especially when I want to be like getting my work out and like doing all these things. But taking a step back for me is doing like daily manageable tasks. So in the mornings, I'll typically, do my journaling and a brain dump, like all the things I want to get done. And then I'll take it over to, okay, what's achievable today? Or what section of this can I get done today? And that way, it doesn't feel overwhelming. And I'm more present in what I'm creating.
Mm. Absolutely. That's really good. Let's see. Maddie said, I've called the friend out and she gets super defensive, and I've expressed how it made me feel, but she didn't give me the time of the day.
Dang, girl. You've been friends a long time? Is it like a relationship that maybe you have been in for a while that like you just feel like you have to hang on to maybe? Because that happens sometimes.
Yeah, or just creating space for the time being as well. Something that I've actually been learning recently within the last couple of months is I remember when I first started my healing journey and I wanted to just step outside my comfort zone, but I knew the people around me would be kind of like, oh, she's doing some woo woo shit, but not really. Just
Mhm.
trying to grow, guys, just like
Yep.
anyone else. And what was I saying? No.
About people, like, calling you out for exploring yourself.
Oh, yeah. And I would just like start cutting people off left and right. But something that I've been learning is that like you don't have to cut people off. Sometimes it's okay to love them from a distance.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really, like, whole way to approach situations or relationships that are special, but have a lot of turbulence in them.
Yeah. Maddie says, we've been friends for a while, but I'm not sure. I definitely haven't given the friendship space, but it's clearly toxic. I'll probably just cut it loose to keep my peace. And it's like you're never gonna miss what's for you though. That's the thing. Like if a friendship is meant to be reconciled later down the road, it truly will be. But if it's not, appreciate it for what it was. I mean, I have this one friend that I was best friends with in high school, and I'm telling you, we were best friends. We had, I think, two classes together. My parents had a summer home in another state, and this girl came to my parents like summer home, and like we hung out. And then her parents came over one day and then they bought a house down the street from us. Like it was like that close, you know what I mean? And then like I wanted to like grow and do things and she wanted to kind of stay in her comfort zone and do things her way. So then we started drifting apart and then things just got really toxic to the point where I just had to cut it off. I think giving it space is a healthy start, but if it's not adding value or getting better, then it might just be better to part ways for the time being and focus on yourself. You've got a community here. I think that's the beautiful thing of online and social media. Like Emily and I met on Substack here and we just connected. So, Maddie, you've got a whole community of people out there that support you and love what you do and who you're becoming. So don't let that one toxic friend take you down, bring you down.
Absolutely. And that reminded me also of something that I thought about at the beginning of my healing journey after kind of working through boundaries. I was starting to look at where I was putting my energy and whether it was being appreciated. And if I was putting out this energy and it wasn't being appreciated, it was at that point where I started to kind of toy with calling that energy back.
Yeah,
So if, like, I know in my heart that the energy I give is like genuine and pure and fun, but like if you're a person who can't see or embrace that, I'll keep that energy. And like you were saying before, the people who see it and value it will come.
absolutely. And I think sometimes taking the road less traveled is it can be tough at first, but it'll be so much more rewarding because you're gonna find your people. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, when I was living back in the city where I grew up, I really didn't have a lot of friends until I moved out of my hometown. And that's when I started to make real connections and real friends because also the people in your hometown, if anyone still lives where they grew up, those people are holding on to a version of you that they want to hold on forever. They don't, if you are growing and changing, they don't want to see you grow and change because that forces them to grow and change. And if they don't want to, they're going to try to pull you back in like a little on the fishing reel. They're going to try to suck you in and keep you comfortable. That's why I think it's really important to just get out of your comfort zone and it's okay to take the road less traveled because you will find your people.
For sure. For sure. I'm trying to think of anything else I could touch on about progress.
Yeah.
I think when we do start making room for the little things, to honor that,
Yeah.
like water those little seeds.
Yeah, and it's like everything you do is sowing a seed. So just keep sowing because eventually you're going to reap. If you want a garden of flowers, you got to plant a lot of seeds and be patient. Keep watering them. And those seeds start within yourself. Are you giving yourself the proper nutrition? Are you socializing with the right people? Are you being mindful of what you put in your brain and all of that? And those are all little seeds. And the more you continue to water them and to give them the sunshine and to feed them properly, you're eventually going to bloom into the beautiful garden that you're meant to be. So never give up when some naysayer gives you hate or gives you judgment about wanting to grow. It's just because they don't want to grow doesn't mean you shouldn't.
Exactly, exactly. And the more you nurture yourself, the more of yourself comes out. And I think that there's something like naturally like attractive about that, like radiant.
Absolutely. It's being your best self and being your quirky, funny self. It's like, don't be afraid to laugh. Go back and play, like, if something, like a place or a thing or food, if there's not like a pleasant memory tied to it, go back, relive that memory, and laugh in those places. Make new memories and enjoy them. I think that's like one of the best things you can do for yourself is laugh in the places that once made you cry.
I love that advice. As a girl who's cried a lot of places, that is some good advice.
I cried in a lot of places too, don't worry. Probably want to go back to all of them and make happy memories with.
Honestly, I yeah, that's like so inspiring though. I
Yeah,
love that.
don't let whatever toxic people were tied to your past. If let's say you really love Chinese food and you used to eat Chinese food with like your old best friend and you guys are no longer friends anymore, go to a Chinese place nearby that you love. Go order some food by yourself. Take a picture. Enjoy that meal, and just make new memories. So then you don't have those negative memories tied to it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like it touches on the idea of like reframing as well.
Yeah,
So
because
it's like when you crave Chinese food, you're like, "Oh man, I also crave that friendship." But if you're, going out, taking yourself out, you're enjoying this and making a new experience, you're kind of rewiring that system.
absolutely. And I think once we get to a certain age, people think we don't grow anymore. But guess what? We are growing. It just may not be as visible from when you were 1 year old to 10 years old. Because, yeah, that's a drastic growth change, but you're still growing from 18 and on as well. Do you wear the same shoes you did when you were 5 years old? No, you outgrew them. So it's just like, yeah, we don't change our shoe size every year after like a certain age, but we're still growing internally, mentally, and spiritually. And those are things to keep in mind that we're always growing. So don't hold on to an old version of yourself.
Absolutely. Like shedding those past layers can be so freeing. And implementing all the things we talked about tonight, setting boundaries and honoring your worth. All these little pieces contribute to like the journey that is self-love and expression.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any other questions about anything on their healing journey or self love journey at all? Feel free to send a message. And Emily and I are always here to chat. We love to chat. Um, Right. Cool. Well, thank you so much for everybody who has joined. This is our first live together, but Emily and I will be doing this every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time and 6 p.m. Uh, Eastern Time. Yeah, that
Mhm.
makes sense. Yeah. So if you guys ever have any questions, send us a message, and or you have any topic suggestions, we'd love to talk about it as well.
Awesome. So much fun, Annetta. And
Yes.
thanks everybody for joining. Maddie, thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you guys. We will see you next week.
See you later, guys.